Black History, Black History Month. Well, let's talk about it. These are the type of conversations that we're going to have as Hebrew Israelites dealing with our people, helping them understand and know about histories that may not be popularized, may not be acceptable, may not be getting put out for our people to discover and understand. But we're going to have to uncover some of those ugly wounds that's out there. Yeah, we know that our people have great contributions and made great inventions and things of that nature. Contributing to the forwarding of this particular society and building up modern day Egypt. And we know about that stuff, man. We're not going to celebrate how much we helped this place prosper, although we can. Maybe I will in the future. Proverbs 11:1 does say a false balance is an abomination. So maybe we'll balance it out. But for right now, we're going to concentrate on the histories that have been forgotten. Many of our people we know about Tulsa, Oklahoma. We know about Black Wall Street. You know, that's been highly publicized now. They've made, I think the movie The Watchmen they did on HBO had highlighted that point. Um, you know, uh, the histories have now been kind of uh, so far exposed that the so-called white man and historians can't hide it anymore. So we know about Tulsa, Oklahoma. But there's a couple of others that we're going to discuss. And this will be part one of maybe a series of two or three. We'll see how the Spirit of the Most High moves. But we're going to talk about Rosewood in Florida. We're going to talk about St. Bernard Parish in Louisiana. We're going to talk about Elaine, Arkansas. All three of those cities suffered dire consequences when going against the so called white man. There's many, many of city and atrocities that our people were uh, killed and destroyed and whole towns destroyed and obliterated through lust, greed, envy, jealousy, and fear that the so-called white man has for our people. Um, we're gonna get right to it. Let's get right to it. Let me share my screen and we're gonna look at some of these things. Okay. First of all, you know, this is something that our people are gonna have to digest and deal with. Many a times, especially leading off of the ideologies and the guilt of the so-called white man. You always get the excuse, man. That was in the past. Let's leave it alone. We don't want to celebrate Black history through just trauma. We don't want to have to revisit the hell. We all know about that. We know about slavery. It's 2023. That was over 400 years ago. We don't have to go backwards. We should be progressive and moving forward. Well, clearly, we don't see a lot of progressive things happening with our people moving forward. There's still concentrated efforts of our oppressors trying to hide, dismantle, and alter our histories. We can't do that if we don't look back and stop it. Do you understand? Tulsa, Oklahoma wouldn't be recognized. Slow Biden and his cronies last year at the 100-year anniversary went out there and had a whole speech and made a whole little hoopla remembering that. Why? Because the memories of the people, the outrages and the outcries of the residents still wanted that thing to be remembered. So if we just sit back and take this attitude of, oh, we don't want to remember, we don't want to look back, oh, close your eyes, that's ugly. We can't do that. Why? Job 8 and 8. For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age. The Most High said, inquire, I pray thee. This is something that is being prayed upon. We have to pray for. We have to beg and desire to search out the former age, to understand our history, to search it out, not to ignore it, not to bypass it, not to be ignorant of it, not to turn a blind eye to it. No, the Lord said you got to search this stuff out. And it said, and prepare thyself. So that means some of the things you're going to uncover, we're going to uncover, may not be pleasant to the eye, may not be all that you would hope for. There's going to be some ugly histories that have to be discovered and understood so that it can be made real to you in today's times. Because little do some of our people know that this is all prophesied. This is what helps make the Bible a living book and more real to us. It speaks to our spirit. It speaks to the spirit of our ancestors. It helps us understand and know the plight that our people went through. It helps us learn from the past so we don't repeat it, i.e., starting to keep the laws and the commandments. So we have to be prepared to look at these things. Stop listening to your damn oppressor saying, I'll leave that alone. I didn't do it. Leave that alone. That was in the past. I mean, how are we going to ever get past this? How are we ever going to get together and be one people again? Or not even again? How are we going to be one people and just Americans if we keep looking back at what we did to you? You understand? The Lord said, no, prepare yourself. So whether or not you want to look at it, recognize it, digest and absorb it, you have to. So be prepared. Prepare thyself to the search of their fathers. Okay? Um, this is another point because actively, history is trying to be altered and deleted. Governor Ron DeSantis, who is rumored to be running for the presidential election in 2024, this man could very well be the president. You know, you Negroes are out here worried about Trump, and then you out here celebrating slow Biden until you realize he stabbed you in the back and been lying to you all day. You're all twisted up. You don't know who to trust. Now you sit back and say, well, maybe DeSantis. Really? Okay, well, let's check him out then. As DeSantis alters black history in schools. Hello? Typical of the so-called white man. Altering history. You know, when we say his story, capital HIS, that's not a hashtag. It's not a figment of our imagination that we just decided to come up with. No, he alters history. He changes history. You understand? You know, they have an old saying, to the victor go the spoils. To the victors usually dictate and incorporate their own histories. Delete and change a lot of things that could be factual. So here he is saying he's going to alter black history in schools. Look at this. Critics say key chapters are lost. Only 11 of Florida's 67 county school districts, including Hillsborough and Pinellas, are considered exemplary at meeting a mandate that African American history be taught. So it's mandated that African American history be taught in Florida county schools, but only 11 of them are doing it. What are the other 56 doing? What are they teaching? What are they not doing for our people? Clearly, they're not trying to uphold any history. They're not trying to help our people remember anything. Why are they allowing these other counties to get away with a mandated course teachings? Let's continue. For 71 years, the survivors of Rosewood controlled their history. They guardedly discussed their histories only at family gatherings, haunted by the threat of retaliation in their rural Central Florida communities. But after the 1990 death of the last surviving witness, the families decided to speak up about the angry white mob that torched and destroyed their black town in Levy County in 1923. The painful details of the unpunished lynchings, did you hear that? Unpunished. This is why you can't say, well, let's forget about it. No, because these things went unpunished. It's white folks in Florida and throughout the country, the descendants of these white mob lynchings and these white mobs are out here claiming white privilege, doing everything that they want to do with no repercussions, no fallback, no nothing. You know what that's called? Aiding and abetting a criminal. You know and have a knowledge of a crime that's been committed and you do nothing about it and you actually aid it and help it by hiding and harboring fugitives. You understand? If somebody robbed a bank that you know and they ran to your house and said, "Man, let me duck out here for a while until the heat dies down, and then I'm gonna get up out of here, and I'll break you off a few $1,000s." And you said, "Man, come on in, hide in the bathroom, stay as long as you need. It's all good." And then when they leave, they drop you off a few $1,000s and they run off. You aided and abetted the criminal. So when you know and understand a crime has been committed and you do nothing about it and you hide it and you're complicit with it, you're just as guilty. That's for the so-called white folks out there that say, "It wasn't me, I didn't do it." Yeah, you're complicit and you're just as guilty. because the painful details of the unpunished lynchings and vigilante violence went from being family secrets to the foundation for legislation awarding the first reparations paid by a state in the nation's history to survivors of racial violence. That's important because of the fact that our people down there in Levy County, the survivors, or the remaining survivors of Rosewood, continue to guard the history and keep those things alive and started pushing towards different acts of legislation because of uh, the atrocities that happened to them. They finally got the first paid reparations by a state in a nation's history to survivors of racial violence. Do you see why it's important that we do not forget history, that we don't just let it slide, that we don't just hide behind that was a long time ago, let's forget about it. I wasn't there, the memories and legacies of these families who was destroyed, their whole income streams, their farms, their lands, all of that was destroyed. Generational wealth that they could have had was all destroyed. And you got people out there talking about we should just forget about it. No, the fact that these families kept the legacy alive helped them get a little reparations, whatever it was. But the fact remains that it's history that we could not forget. It had to be remembered so that we can actually learn from it. Continuing on, they also became the catalyst for the 1994 law requiring the teaching of Florida's Black history in K through 12 schools. Did you hear? Did you see the year though? 29 years ago is well, let's put it this way. Black history has only been mandatedly taught in Florida schools for 29 years. Forget the fact that we've been here well over 400 years. If you cannot see that there was a deliberate attempt to ignore, block, and destroy the history of our people, I don't know what the hell to tell you. But the fact that Black history is only 29 years old in Florida is disgusting. They also became the catalyst for the 1994 requiring the teaching of Florida's Black history in K 12 schools. The law requires that courses comprise five components: African beginnings, the passage to America, slavery, the Reconstruction period after the Civil War, and the contributions of African Americans to society. So they give you a slate of okay and not okay topics to discuss. They start us off at point B. They forget about point A. Our people did not descend or begin in Africa, contrary to popular belief that the so-called white man is delivered on a plate, along with a fresh pair of silver spoons and forks, knives, and says, "Here, dig in. This is what this is all you can be exposed to." Forget about the extremities of the past of our people descending from the east. Jerusalem. Our people descending from the Fertile Crescent, that so-called Middle East. Do you understand? Forget about that. They don't want to talk about the diaspora of our people being scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. They don't want to talk about the destruction of our temple in our land taken over by the Romans in 70 AD and us being forced to flee into Africa, into the interiors of Africa. They don't want to talk about our people being scattered and being forced uh, and expelled after an Inquisition in Spain and Portugal, having to flee into West Africa. West Africa was a place of refuge. It wasn't our homeland. So they half stepping on that. But nonetheless, this is a checklist that they approved and said, oh, for the last 29 years, this is all you can talk about. Well, the problem now is that you got teachers and you've got, um, you know, uh, people within the county saying that ain't enough. There's got to be more. We want to know more. We want AP, higher standards of education when it comes down to Black history. And you know what? Governor Ron DeSantis says, no, 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 no. You can only look through door one. You can look through the peephole of door two. Door three is completely closed. You cannot look there. No. Look at this. Now, as Governor Ron DeSantis mounts a political attack on what he calls the quote woke mob. So the fact that you're trying to be woke, you're trying to wake up, understand who you are. Same way the FBI says that you're a Black identity extremist. Can you understand that? You're Black and you want to identify yourself, and that's considered extreme. That's the danger of us waking up. So what else does he say? DeSantis mounts a political attack on what he calls the quote woke mob. He claims that certain instruction of black history is the equivalent of a political indoctrination. So now he's trying to relevate black history with political indoctrination. Well, we're going to see about political indoctrination when we see about what went on in one of these particular cities, and how politics played a role in the destruction and the murdering of our people. And educators and advocates who push for Black history standards say the governor's policies are threatening to reverse the modest progress they have made. So they're saying you're going to erase what? Black history. As DeSantis defends against the charges that he is erasing the state's Black history, he cites the 1994 law as evidence that is required to be taught, but he confronted with contradictions. So he's saying, oh, no, no, we love you niggas. We love Black history. Look, 1994, we've been teaching it since then. But what? Budget records show that the implementation of the law that has been on the books for nearly 28 years has been not only understaffed and barely enforced. This is why we see 11 out of the uh, 67 counties are teaching it. But DeSantis and legislative leaders have rejected requests to beef up resources to expand the teaching of Black history in Florida. Oh, you want more history? You want more information, more books? You want access to more archaeology? No, we can't do that. No, no, no. Can't do that. That might uncover something. You understand? Let's look at this last paragraph. It says, we proudly require the teaching of African American history. Do you really? It's double speaking and complete lies. We do not accept woke indoctrination masquerading as education. So the fact that you want to be woke, they said they're masquerading that. There's a hidden agenda behind it, claiming it's education, but really it's liberation, and we don't want that. Wrote Education Commissioner Manny Diaz on Twitter last month as he defended the Department of Education's decision to reject the advanced placement course in African American studies because it, quote, lacked educational value. You know, the fact that you can say that, quote unquote, African American studies lacks educational value should have got him fired. But guess what? Revenge is of the Lord's. They're going to see really what's going on because guess what? They got no problem with European AP history. That can be taught. You know, I think it's Chinese history or Japanese history, AP that can be taught. I think even Arab history is AP. They teach that in Florida. But you so-called blacks, you cannot have advanced placement um, history being taught because there's no educational value in it. What good is it? Let's look at what this says in Wisdom of Solomon. Wisdom of Solomon, the fifth chapter. Let's read this real quick. Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him and made no account of his labors. Did you hear that? Made no account of his labors. When they see it, they shall be troubled with fear and shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, so far beyond all that they look for. Yeah, so when they see the strangeness of our salvation, a black man, white woolly hair, red eyes, garment dripped in blood, that's going to be strange to them. The chariots crack in the sky, fire, brimstone, hell on earth happening, destroying the nations. Oh, that's going to be very strange. To see the blacks, Native Americans, and Hispanics, men and women, are going to be liberated, beamed up, delivered from the destructions, those who have repented, the elect. Oh, that's going to be strange. The fact of saying that no, God does not love everybody. There's not going to be a John 3:16 coalition that everybody thinks is going to be happening. That's the strangest of our salvation. So far beyond all that they look for. Why? Because religion, Christianity, Catholicism, they're teaching you a whole nother form of salvation that the Bible does not speak of. And what else? And they repenting and groaning for anguish of spirit shall say within themselves, this was he whom we had sometimes in derision and a proverb of reproach. So they had our people in derision, had our people confused. They fed us all different kind of nationalities to live by, gave us our nationalities, gave us our language, gave us our culture, said what's okay, what isn't okay, told us what we can learn historically and what we can't. And if you go beyond those realms, you're looked at as a terrorist, you're looked at as a threat, you're looked at as a hate group, so forth and so on. had us in derision and a proverb of reproach. All the nations run around here scared of us. All of them got derogatory names for us. What else did he say? We fools accounted his life madness and his end to be without honor. Well, isn't that what they're saying here? They lack learning about African American history at an advanced level lacks educational value. There's nothing to see here. Move on. Well, that's according to the scriptures. Playing out right now. See why history is important? See why we have to recognize these things? Deuteronomy 28. Let's read 15 and 16. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So this is a classic. Those of us who's in the knowledge and been live learning and applying these laws and these commandments, we know and understand what this means. For those that's just coming in, you just trying to learn, you just happen to float on in and see, hey, what's this guy talking about? This is the curse that befell the Israelites for not keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. What was one of those curses? Curse shalt thou be in the city, and curse shalt thou be in the field. We're going to concentrate on this particular curse. Let's concentrate on this curse, right? But first of all, we're going to read, let's read a couple of different scriptures, man, just in the scene uh, how these curses played out and how the judgment of the Most High is going to befall on our enemies that came up against our people. Habakkuk chapter 2, we're going to read just verse 12. It says, woe to him that buildeth a town with blood and establisheth a city by iniquity. So destruction is going to come to those who builds towns with bloodshed and establishes cities with iniquity. We just got through seeing that the perpetrators of what happened in Rosewood went unpunished. We're going to see in these other instances in Elaine, Arkansas, St. Bernard Parish in Louisiana went unpunished. You understand? That's because these cities were established by iniquity, by wickedness, by evil, by injustice, I should say. Building towns with blood on the backs and the bloodshed of dead slaves, man. That's how they built this place up. Let's look at Jeremiah. Jeremiah 22. Let's read verse 13. It says, woe unto him that buildeth his house by unrighteousness, and his chambers by wrong, that useth his neighbor's service without wages, and giveth him not for his work. Well, who did that? Who had houses built? You want to talk about positive reinforcement of what the so-called black man did? Look up Benjamin Banneker. See what he did with the White House. See what he did with Washington, D.C. and the blueprint that he made. The whole construction of that area over there. The blueprints. Yeah, so-called black man did it. You're driving up and down the street, man. You stop at a stoplight, Garrett Morgan. Give credit to him. You understand? They don't even want to talk about the rest of the event. That's light work, what we're talking about here. But him that buildeth this house by unrighteousness. The white man came over here in all unrighteousness. Raped, robbed, stole, murdered, killed, gave false peace treaties, broken covenants to establish and steal lands. Woe unto him that buildeth this house by unrighteousness. Living through Jim Crow era, the Dred Scott law. You follow what I'm saying? The Indian Removal Acts, all of these things. Build his house with unrighteousness, and his chambers by wrong. That useth his neighbor's service without wages and giveth them not for his work. Built on the backs of slaves, man. We built this country. It wasn't given no wages for it. Do you understand? That saith, I will build me a wide house and large chambers, and cutteth them out windows, and is sealed with cedar and painted with vermilion. So here he is, building up the skyscrapers, building up the nice plus mansions and so forth and so on, man. You got our Northern Kingdom brothers, man, slaving and building up these houses and homes and buildings and construction sites and everything else that we've done, building up the slave plantations that are now being looked at as tourist attractions in some areas. All of these things that we're seeing here is all built on the back of his neighbor service without giving wages and not giving him for his work. You got our Northern Kingdom brothers, man, and Southern Kingdom brothers out here building up this place, killing themselves just to live, man. Waking up, drinking 2 and 3 monsters and damn Red Bulls to stay energized to make the goals of building and establishing, these particular uh, homes and buildings and offices or whatnot. And then the only way they can come down is to drink a damn 6 pack of beer to now drop it down so they can go to sleep and wake up again early in the morning to go do it all over again, tearing their bodies up, tearing themselves up just to get out there and labor. Because why? The white man said, "I'm gonna build me a wide house and large chambers and all of that." And guess what? I got little poor niggas in Spix that's gonna do it for me. All right. So I'm gonna stop with that one. Let's get. Give me another one. Let's get another one. And Micah 2. Micah 2, 1 and 2, it says, "Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand." So the so called white man devises nothing but iniquity. He's constantly scheming and trying to figure out how he can get over, how we can, breach particular contracts, how we can deceive, how we can change and alter histories, how we can go out here and steal and rob lands, how we can manipulate and kill, rob, murder, and steal, how we can poison our people. And he gets up in the morning, soon as it's light, he starts practicing it. Why? It says because it is in the power of their hand. Job 9:24 tells us that the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. All you got to do is say, well, who's in control of the earth? It'll all line up. Verse 2. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. So we're going to see all of these things play out right now, taking fields by violence, taking houses, oppressing a man in his house, destroying a whole heritage of man. You know what that means? History. Even a man in his heritage, his pedigree, his family line, his inheritances, anything and everything that has to do with historical based information for blacks and Hispanics, they taking it all, mainly by violence. Let's look at this. Rosewood Massacre. The Rosewood Massacre was an attack on the predominantly black, I want to say black, predominantly African American town of Rosewood, Florida in 1923 by large groups of white aggressors. The town was entirely destroyed by the end of the violence and the residents were driven out permanently. The story was mostly forgotten until the 1980s when it was revived and brought to public attention. Did you see that? Mostly forgotten until the 80s. And it's just like old Scooby Doo, cartoon in a mystery machine. Every time somebody, the Scooby Doo and the rest of them find a culprit, they always say, "I would have got away with it if it wasn't for you, mangly, nosy kids." That's how the white man thinks. He would have got away with it, but it's too bad people were actually looking into history. It's too bad that the families were saying, "We're not going to let this memory be erased," and now everybody knows about it. Though it was originally settled in 1845 by both black and white people, black codes and Jim Crow laws in the years after the Civil War fostered segregation in Rosewood and much of the South. Employment was provided by pencil factories, and the cedar tree population soon became decimated, and white families moved away in the 1890s and settled in the nearby town of Sumner. So, you have blacks and whites living in Rosewood at one particular point in time. Jim Crow laws, Civil War, fostered in segregation. They separated the towns, and because of the pencil factories and the cedar tree population being decimated, white folks said, "Ain't no more money here. We're out of here. Let the niggas have the scraps." Good old Fannie Taylor. What happened? Well, let's drop down. I don't want to skip over too much. It says by the 1920s, Rosewood's population of about 200 was entirely made up of black citizens, except one white family that ran the general store there. January 1st, 1923, in Sumner, Florida, 22-year-old Fannie Taylor was heard screaming by a neighbor. The neighbor found Taylor covered in bruises and claiming a black man had entered the house and assaulted her. If y'all seen the movie, she cried rape. White man actually did it. She ran out and said that a nigga did it. That elicited her husband, to round up him and his buddies, the KKK and everybody else, man. And they went on a killing spree to destroy every black person they could find. That's the summation of what's going on. Uh, but let's continue on right here. It says the incident was reported to Sheriff Robert Elias Walker, with Taylor specifying that she had not been raped. Fannie Taylor's husband, James Taylor, a foreman at the local mill, escalated the situation by gathering an angry mob of white citizens to hunt down the culprit. He also called for help from the white residents in neighboring counties, among them a group of about 500 Ku Klux Klan members who were in Gainesville for a rally. The white mobs prowled the area woods searching for any black man they could find. So mind you, this is only a town of 200. They had not only all the white citizens in Sumner and an angry white mob, they had 500 KKK members. The 500 already dwarfed the population of um, Rosewood by 300. And now you add in a whole nother white mob that's all hell bent on finding a black man to kill him. Law enforcement found out that a black prisoner named Jesse Hunter had escaped the chain gang and immediately designated him a suspect. The mobs focused their searches on Hunter, convinced that he was being hidden by the black residents. And you know where the rest goes. They torched, destroyed, and killed all the residents that they could find in Rosewood. So, for more information on that, you can read more. I'm not going to read the entire article, but this is on history.com. You can look it up. If you haven't found out, knew about it, you can watch the movie. But what eventually happened is they completely torched and destroyed that town and that city. The surviving members, escaped out. And we see that the last surviving member died in 1990. But all because of a false accusation, and they just pointed the blame on an escaped prisoner. No proof, no nothing. And the woman said she wasn't raped, but they didn't give a damn. Her husband went hell bent on destroying all the black people that they could find. And the reason why it was unjustified is because of the fact that Florida decided to enact the reparations to the families and recognize that this was an ill uh, atrocity that was committed against our people. Let's look at the next one. Saint Bernard Parish, 1868, another massacre. Uh, All right, I'll read a little bit of this. Black history comprises events that would later go on to shape black culture, while some incidences bring back beautiful memories and help the black community to grow and integrated them with the whites for sustainable development of the United States. Others denoted atrocities committed against them. One of such incidents was the St. Bernard Parish 1868 massacre. However, some of the events that transpired on the fateful day in 1863 have become obscure. As a result, the power is now has decided to bring you up to speed as to why St. Bernard Parish 1868 massacre happened, the players, and how it ended. Check this out. The incident occurred on the 25th of October 1868, a few years after the end of the American Civil War. It was one grave massacre that was unforgettable in the history of Louisiana, as many black men lost their lives in violence orchestrated by the whites. The massacre preceded the general election. Now, here, this is what we're talking about. Well, DeSantis is running around talking about, black history is being used as a political indoctrination. Well, let's see how they utilize politics with our people, and should they be worried about indoctrination? The massacre preceded the general election scheduled to hold a few days later. Black men had been granted the right to vote in Louisiana, but the whites were afraid that the Democratic candidate, Horatio Seymour, would not win the election against Ulysses S. Grant, his rival, because of the majority in Louisiana. Did you hear that? You so called Negroes out here who's been programmed to vote Democrat because that's what they telling you are the good guys that look out for you. These were your oppressors. These are the ones that were organizing white mob violence, killing you if you voted Republican. The fact remains is that number one, the Bible says that you're not supposed to put a king over you that's not of your own nation, so you're not even supposed to be voting anyway for any of these other nations to rule over you. Number two, uh, the most I said is you got to stand up. Who's going to stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? So you're supposed to stand up against iniquity and not even participate in it. Number three, this is two wings of the same bird. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. They both have plotted and taken advantage of your ignorance and still utilize your vote to continually impose more oppression on you. And you still got these damn Negroes out here that's running around here talking about if you don't vote, you can't complain. If you don't vote, that's the only way we can make change. I mean, what? We've been having this ability to vote for well over 50 years now, and ain't nothing changed, man. Let's not talk about that we're in a progressive state right now. Things are looking good. When we just got to reading about DeSantis saying that he's trying to change and alter Black history. The Black history has no educational value, and this is who was voted in. This is who could possibly be the next president if he decides to declare. And our people talking about, yeah, vote. Don't worry. The politicians got your best interest at hand. We can't change nothing unless we vote. No, it doesn't work that way. Ask our people back here, the descendants of the people of St. Bernard Parish. So they were concerned that once black folks got the right to vote, that the Democrat candidate Horatio Seymour wouldn't win. So what did they do? Due to this, the white Democrats formed armed men to kill the black voters who were ever zealous to cast their votes in a presidential election and restore their way of life, which they believe had been infringed upon. In essence, they planned to win the election for Horatio Seymour through violence. Didn't we just get to read that in Micah too? Whoever won the D-Day would determine the blacks' fate in the Reconstruction era. The racial incident that instigated the famous occurrence wasn't peculiar to Louisiana alone, but the South as well. The southern part strived to make ends meet as a result of its devastating economy destroyed in the war, which relied tremendously on the slave population. Did you hear that? Didn't we just get to read that in Jeremiah 22 about them using his neighbor's service without wages? The devastated economy because of the war, relied tremendously on the slave population to what? Rebuild it, reestablish it, get it back cracking. The Southern elites, especially the whites, believed that Seymour would bring back the Reconstruction era policy that gave them the upper hand over blacks and ultimately control if he wins, something that they no longer had. In his campaign, Seymour voiced his vitu- vituperations of the blacks and the whites' disenfranchisement and proudly branded himself as a candidate of the whites. The elites opined that if Seymour's opponent, Grant, wins, he would enact policies that would eliminate racial inequality, that would crumble the political structure and other policies that had long favored the whites in the South. So we see what this was all about, right? Um, let's go down here. Okay. The first death was recorded on the 25th of October when a black man, Eugene Locke, was shot and stabbed several times. Eugene Locke happened to be present when the white marchers were rallying for Seymour. They yelled at him to support Seymour, but he refused. One of the marchers tried to scare Locke to voice his support for Seymour, but he remained resilient. The crowd became furious. A marcher tried stabbing Locke, while another fired at him, missing the target by an inch. Locke took his pistol from the pocket and fired back at the man that shot him on the shoulder. He tried to elude, but was outnumbered and died eventually. So he tried to defend himself. He ended up getting put to death. Locke's death news spread throughout St. Bernard Parish, but some freedmen, as they were called then, thought the death was a case of being in the right place at the wrong time. However, this didn't stop them from bracing themselves for war, as they believed this would escalate into something much deeper. They were right. Another freedman, Lewis Wilson, was captured the following day after coming from the courthouse where he testified in the case. St. Bernard Parish was Wilson's residence, and as he rode home along the Mississippi River, the white armed men in horseback stopped and ordered him to descend his horse, which he obediently did. He was struck in the chin with a gun's butt and taken to the white Democrats group in a wagon to a temporary prison where Wilson discovered that they had other freedmen. So now the black folks, freedmen, came back from the war, have been liberated from their slavery, now working as sharecroppers and whatnot. They're out here preparing for war because they know the white folks is out here talking about if you vote Democrat, it's on, we killing you, we head hunting you, this, that, and the third. So they're not getting, intimidated with their newly ability to vote. They were preparing for war, and we're seeing that people was getting locked up, people was getting killed. You understand? So in essence, a somewhat of a civil war started happening. Okay. Look at this. The number of deaths recorded varies. Approximately 35 to 100 people died from the attack. Lewis Wilson escaped death in a temporary prison by fleeing to the cane fields, resting there for a few days. So this is what they saying. We can't even trust these numbers, man. The white man lies all the time. When he speaketh fair, believe him not, because there's 7 abominations in his heart. So this is what number that he's comfortable with admitting to. A minimum of 35. We won't go no higher than 100. You know, even though it could have been well over 100. Oh, 35, cool. We could cop to that. 45, yeah, that's cool. 60, all right. Well, how about 125? No, no, hell no, no, no. We can't do that. Most bodies that we'll claim is 100. Can you imagine? How the massacre ended. It ended after the Republican candidate was declared the winner of the election. So Ulysses S. Grant won. However, the aftermath didn't go quite well for the blacks, as 60 of them were apprehended for the massacre. You see, if any blacks that fought back, they get apprehended. Unfortunately, none of the perpetrators was questioned. None of the white folks was questioned. An investigation was carried out, but none was arrested for the severe killings. None was arrested, huh? Uh, Zechariah 11. Let's look at verse 5 real quick. It says, verse 4 and 5. Thus saith Yahweh, my power, feed the flock of the slaughter, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, blessed be Yahweh, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not. So they hold themselves not guilty. They take advantage of the ignorance of our people, and they make no apologies for it. Unfortunately, none of the perpetrators were questioned. An investigation was carried out, but none was arrested for the severe killings. Even after the survivors identified the culprits, justice wasn't carried out. In retaliation, they killed a Pablo Sanfeliu. They were eventually arrested for the murder. So 35 to 100 black folks died. Any of the black people that try to retaliate or try to defend themselves, they got apprehended, and no perpetrators were questioned. No arrest was made for the severe killings. That's St. Bernard Parish, 1868. Last one. Elaine Massacre of 1919. The Elaine Massacre was by far the deadliest racial confrontation in Arkansas's history and possibly the bloodiest racial conflict in the history of the United States. While its deepest roots lay in the state's commitment to white supremacy, the events in Elaine, or Phillips County, stem from these tense race relations and growing concerns about labor unions. A shooting incident that occurred at a meeting of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union escalated into mob violence on the part of the white people in Elaine and surrounding areas. Although the exact number is unknown, always, we don't know. It's estimated. We lost track of how many are we killed. You know, although the exact number is unknown, estimates of the number of African Americans killed by whites range into the hundreds, while only 5 white people lost their lives. This is all over labor law, labor conflicts. You know, brothers that were sharecroppers, man, decided to take it to their unions and say, hey, we're not getting paid enough. We want to renegotiate. We want to do this. And they said, nigga, what? We're not giving you nothing. Matter of fact, how dare you even come in here and try to fight back? Let's start putting them to death. Let's read. The conflict began on the night of September 30th, 1919, when approximately 100 African Americans, mostly sharecroppers on the plantations of white landowners, attended a meeting of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America at a church in Hoop Spur, 3 miles north of Elaine. The purpose of the meeting, one of several by black sharecroppers in the Elaine area during the previous months, was to obtain better payments for their cotton crops from the white plantation owners who dominated the area during the Jim Crow era. Black sharecroppers were often exploited in their efforts to collect payment for their cotton crops. The union had contracted with lawyer Ulysses S. Bratton, whose son Osier was at the meeting. So we seeing what's going on here. Precept came to my mind. Haggai 1 and verse 6, it says, ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put into a bag with holes. So you see the labor that we go through, man? Do you see what we have to deal with? As soon as we earn it, it goes right back out. Uh, Reinstituting and reinvigorating this system of the beast. You understand? Soon as you earn some money, man, you're gonna go put it back to your you're paying rent, you're paying the mortgage, you're paying car insurance, you're paying a car note, you're paying utilities, you're buying your food from your enemies, any entertainment that you want, you're paying your little streaming services, it's going right back to him. Everything gets reincorporated. And to top it all out, we didn't even mention that before you get your paycheck, he took his part out first through taxes. So when you see and understand what the brothers in Elaine, Arkansas was doing, they was like, look, we trying to negotiate, man. We need to get a little bit more money. We over here sharecropping, breaking our backs, picking this cotton, and we're not getting paid fairly. In previous months, racial conflict had occurred in numerous cities in America, including Washington, D.C., Chicago, Illinois, Knoxville, Tennessee, and Indianapolis, Indiana, with labor conflicts escalating throughout the country at the end of World War I. Government and business interpreted the demands of labor increasingly as the work of foreign ideologies such as Bolshevism that threaten the foundation of the American economy. So they're talking about both the Bolsheviks, Russian communism and all of that. They're saying, oh, these niggas is learning more about communism than they are about, white supremacist capitalism over here. They fighting in the wars and now they're learning and they're being indoctrinated elsewhere. This could be a threat. Thrown into this highly combustible mix was the return of the United States of black soldiers who often exhibited a less submissive attitude with the Jim Crow society around them. So guess what happens? Black soldiers was coming back over here saying, "Man, I just went over here and killed some white folks in World War One. I'm not scared of them no more. I think we should start standing up. To hell with that." And now they seeing that there was a problem. Unions such as progressive farmers represented a threat not only to the tenet of white supremacy but also the basic concepts of capitalism. Although the United States was on the winning side of of World War One, supporters of American capitalism found in communism a new menace to their security. With the success of the Russian Revolution, stopping the spread of international communism was seen as the duty of all loyal Americans. Arkansas Governor Charles Hemming Bro told a St. Louis, Missouri audience during the war that, quote, there existed no twilight zone in American patriotism, and called Wisconsin Senator Robert LaFollette, who opposed the war, a Bolshevik leader during the, quote, Red Scare. The threat of Bolshevism seemed to be everywhere, not only in the labor strikes led by the radical industrial workers of the world, but also in the cotton fields of Arkansas. Long story short, let's read this. The next morning, Phillips County sent out a posse to arrest those suspected of being involved in the shooting. Maybe we'll go back up. I don't want to skip nothing. Leaders of the Hoop Spur Union had placed armed guards around the church to prevent disruption of their meeting and intelligence gathering by white opponents. Though accounts who fired the first shots are sharp in conflict, a shootout in front of the church of the night of September 30th, 1919, between the armed black guards around the church and three individuals whose vehicle was parked in front of the church resulted in the death of W.A. Atkins, a white security officer for the Missouri Pacific Railroad, and the wounding of Charles Pratt, Phillips County's white deputy sheriff. So they don't know who shot first, how it went down, but because two white men was killed, oh, all hell's got to break loose. And this is all of them trying to protect themselves during a labor union meeting. The threat and the insecurities of the so-called white man of blacks trying to unionize and trying to come up and say we want equal pay. This all becomes a problem. The next morning, the Phillips County Sheriff sent out a posse to arrest those suspected of being involved in the shooting. Although the posse encountered minimal resistance from the black residents of the area around Elaine, the fear of African Americans who outnumber whites in this area of Phillips County by a ratio of 10 to 1 led an estimated 500 to 1,000 armed white people, mostly from surrounding Arkansas counties, but also from across the river in Mississippi, to travel to Elaine to put down what was characterized by them as a, quote, insurrection. On October 1st, Phillips County authorities sent 3 telegrams to Governor Bro requesting that U.S. troops be sent to Elaine. Bro responded by gaining permission to the Department of War to send more than 500 battle-tested troops from Camp Pike outside of Little Rock. So not only did they have 500 to 1,000 armed white people, they also recruited in 500 U.S. troops to take on black folks, man, who were trying to stand up to defend themselves and just wanted equal pay. Long story short, we see that they, estimate. Let's go back up. Hundreds of our people was killed and only 5 white people lost their lives. This is one of the greatest massacres that happened to our people, all because they were in fear of a insurrection of the so-called black man trying to stand up for wanting equal pay, that would dare to stand up to his oppressors during the Jim Crow era and say, hey, you know what? We need a little bit more pay. Let's talk about it. Oh, all hell's got to break loose. They're bringing in the damn National Guard and everybody else to destroy and kill our people. Man. You can read more about this, um, online. Just look up the Elaine massacre in 1919. You'll see it. Look up the Um, St. Bernard Parish, 1868 massacre. Look up Rosewood, 1923. You can get more history, get more information, get more understanding on what truly happened historically with our people when it came down to the destruction and the oppressions of our people. That's just three. We got more. We got more. Stay tuned. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh Shah, man. If you have not already, man, make sure you wipe your feet on the way out. Support the channel. All you got to do is hit that thumbs up button, man. All will be well. All will be good. All right. Let's get the algorithms going, man. Support the channel. Share and like this video. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High. Yahweh Shai. Shalom.